Okay, Shabbat Tov. So today we are up to a piece on the Ketores. No, not the Ketores. I mean, it's in the Ketores, but on the what's titled the Chelbonah, the Indian of the Chelbonah. Before we do that, I just want to add something. We spoke 2 weeks. We related to the issue of the fact that Hashem Baruch Hu doesn't need us, right? So I realized the first place we should really quote in that regard is the Rambam, right? The Rambam in Hilchos Yisodei HaTorah, Perek Aleph, Halacha Gimel, right, all the way at the beginning, basically, right? It says that Shekol HaNimtzroim Tzrichim Lo, all the beings need God, V'hu Baruch Hu Einay Tzarech Lahem V'lo Lechad Mehem, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need people or not creations. It doesn't need even one of them, right? So it's a halacha in the Rambam that that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need us. So just we quoted the Ramchal. Okay, Ramchal. So now we have it from a rationalist and a Kabbalist. Okay, so from all directions, this is Davar Pashat. All right. Anyway,
even in Rav Kook's Shleimus v'Hishtalmus, one still needs to say
yes.
There's no Torah.
Yeah, still, yeah. Okay, now v'hachelbena, Amar Rabbi Chana bar Bizna, Amar Rabbi Shimon Chasida, Kol tainis she'ein ba mipayshe Yisrael ein a tainis. Any fast. Oh, great! So we're reading this right before the Shiva Sabbath fast, right? Tomorrow. Kol tainis she'ein ba mipayshe Yisrael ein a tainis. Any fast day that does not have included in it from the sinners of Israel, ein a tainis is not a tainis. Shari Chelbonah Reicha Ra. The Chelbonah's odor is bad. And yet the pasuk counted it together with the Samamani Hakteris. So you see that despite the Chelbonah having a Reach Ra, it is part and parcel of the Samamani Hakteris. Similarly, the Tainus, which also is meant to be l'ratzon lifnei Hashem, has to be inclusive of even the Paishe Yisrael, who obviously Reicham Ra. Okay. Says Rabbi Yaakov Moshe, Yisrael hem bechinas hareach. The Jewish people are in the bechina of reach. Re'ei reach b'ni k'reach soda asher berchai Hashem. Says the Gemara in Tainus, see, the smell of my son is like the smell of the field that God blessed. K'reach sadeh shel tapuchim, like the smell of a field of. Today we translated apples. I'm not sure if that's really what it is in Chazal or not, but whatever it is, of fruits, right? This beautiful smell of these of the fruit trees. However, so there's this reach, okay, this reach, which again in last week's piece we saw that reach has to do with tara, has to do with purity. That's the sense of smell. But there's we know that reach is a very high. It's actually, according to the Bnei Yissaschar, it's the highest of the senses. The Pashas, I would say, even of the Gemara, is that it's from the highest of the senses, right? Because the whole inyan that the Chazal tell us that the reach is the sense that the neshama is nenes mimeno, which is why we do psamim, right? Because there's the spiritual pleasure. The other senses apparently don't, everything that the guf has hana from affects the neshama, right? But there's some kind of direct connection between the physical sense of smell and the neshama. That hana of smelling the besamim on Motzei Shabbos, revives us. It gets brings us our neshama back to a level of calm. It gets very sad and down, whatever. This brings us back up. So you see that reach is a very important and spiritual sense. As a matter of fact, maybe adding to what we said is, the Bnei. I was about to say with the Bnei Yissaschar. Bnei Yissaschar says by Purim, he says that the only sense that wasn't affected in the Chet of the Eitz Hadas was the sense of smell. Reb Tzadok learns differently. Reb Tzadok learns the sense of smell was, but the Bnei Yissaschar says he has good taina. You see that he touched the pasuk says that they took the fruit of the man. You see that he saw or she saw, the sense of smell. He listened to her, sense of shmiya. What am I missing? Hearing, tasting. Obviously, right? They tasted it, but the sense of smell wasn't implicated in the psukim. You read the psukim, there's nothing about smell. It's not like, oh, he smelled the food and I gotta have this, right? That could be, but we don't find that. So it says the Bnei Yissaschar, that's the reason that the sense of smell remained unaffected. It remained on a spiritual level. All the other senses did begin on a spiritual level, where we could say the neshama was nenes from them. But because of the chet, they descended down into the deep physicality, so that they no longer have that direct spiritual pleasure, and the sense of smell, which was not used in the chet of the Eitzadas, remained on that high spiritual level. So with this we understand the significance that the Yisrael is the bechinas hareach. Says Rabbi Yaakov Moshe, Omnam nister hu hareach, v'tzarch dikirot legaloto. What's unique about smell, about odor, is that the smell of many things is hidden, and it requires dikirot, like stabbings, or to reveal it. Okay, it requires some kind of like stabbings to reveal it. You will see, you have with besamim, right? So the people rub it. You have to do something. You have to like irritate it. You have to irritate it to get the smell to give off its odor correctly or well. For this reason, the Jewish people are compared to a rose. The more that the thorn pokes the rose, the flower, the more it gives off its smell. The more you poke them, the more you stab them, the more smell they give off. And we see it today, since Simchas Torah, since this, what's known as October 7th, right? So that, the whole world has stabbed us, really, not just the Arabs, right? The whole world has stabbed us in many ways, and you find that more and more Jews are revealing that good smell of purity, of connection to Hashem, of interest in their Judaism, and of course, not to mention the enormous outpouring of chesed that's gone on within the Jewish community. So you see that the more that Klal Yisrael gets stabbed and poked and irritated, and the more the better their smell, the more their smell becomes revealed, meaning that deep spiritual quality becomes revealed. Yesh dikirot gufaniot. There are physical stabbings, v'yesh dikirot ruchaniot, but there's also spiritual stabbings. Hein azut dikfira. That is the chutzpah of, the audacity of kfira, of denial of Hashem. Right? Kfira is a spiritual stabbing. Umitoch kach, reach chakal tapuchen kadishin shel oimek hakdusha shebYisrael yoytzem vasim esoilim kulei. And from within that azus of kfira, of denying Hashem, the smell of the chakal tapuchen kadishin, which is a Kabbalistic term, right, which refers to really the Malchus, the sphere of Malchus, and so that which literally means the field of holy tapuchim. So that smell of that holy smell of the chakal tapuchen kadishin, of the depth of the kedusha shebYisrael, goes out and is mevasim. It sweetens the entire world. Vayareach es reach begodav. The pasuk says, actually by Esav, but Chazal darshan it for Klal Yisrael. He smelled the odor of his clothing, right? Because we know Esav really took the big day, the begodim that come from Gan Eden, right? They had the smell of Gan Eden. So Yitzchak smelled the reach of his begodav. Says Chazal, al tikri begodav ela boigdov. Don't read it as his clothing, but rather his traitors. Meaning, what Chazal they're referring to Klal Yisrael is that within the treason of the Jew, which is his rebellion against God, within there too is the reach of Gan Eden, which is mind-boggling. And so that's what Rabbi Yaakov Moshe is saying, that if you really get down to the depth of the Azus de Kfira within the Jewish people, and that's a stabbing, it's a terrible stabbing, but it's actually also helps reveal the odor of Kedusha within Klal Yisrael. I don't want to make believe I am 100% sure in what Rabbi Yaakov Moshe is saying here. He doesn't explain himself. So I'm going to, based on what I've seen elsewhere in Rabbi Yaakov Moshe, and unfortunately I just didn't have the time to find we once learned it inside years ago. I don't know if you were here or not in those days, but we once went through his answer, his essay called Tovim Ma'ores, which is his protection of Rav Kook when they attacked Rav Kook on his words regarding the Paishei Yisrael, the sinners of Israel, that they too are holy and their actions also reveal some kind of holiness, and Rav Kook was tremendously attacked for this. Rabbi Yaakov Moshe has a whole mahalach over there to explain it. So coming from that and that type of angle, from what I remember, and I didn't have a chance to look at it inside, I haven't seen it in years, probably since we went through it in the Shiurim, which was probably like 5 years ago or something. I know it was a long time ago. So the part is, okay, so I'm removing Achrayas. I'm just saying this is my explanation of it. I think it's coming from different places in Rabbi Yaakov Moshe and Rav Kook, but ultimately the Kfira itself in Klal Yisrael comes from a deep point of connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So one of the things that's brought down in the Ksavim, I remember this more in Rav Kook, but it could be that it's in Rabbi Yaakov Moshe also, just would have to think about, is that when in recent years, right? In recent years, in the last 100 years, right? There's been a tremendous rise in kfira, in being, in people being kaifer b'Hashem, and they critique different aspects of Judaism, right? And they ask questions, hard, penetrating questions sometimes, and they go off from those questions. Okay, but the truth of the matter is what those questions really are about is that they're not satisfied with the lame answers that are being given. In other words, there have been many answers. The way Rav Kook or Rabbi Yaakov Moshe would speak about it is that, there's been many answers given on this like rationalistic type level, but we know that there's something called sod. There's the secrets of the Torah that are behind, and those give much deeper meanings, and they go much deeper and give a much deeper understanding, connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So people aren't satisfied by just being given, the old basic stuff, which is basically what you're given already in pre-1A, and they want a deeper connection. If they're not getting that because there isn't who to offer those explanations and those understandings, so that makes them be koifer b'Hashem, because they don't accept this oversimplified, simplistic religion, which is actually not really true, right? There's more. It's not true in the sense of, yes, there's much deeper stuff going on. There's deep roots and there's deep answers. Doesn't mean that we understand everything about God, but but we kind of sense in that we have this, like, I don't know what you call it, sixth sense maybe, that there's more here that I should be able to understand. We won't be. We have to remember that Kadosh Baruch Hu created us and our whole psychology, right? So that we will naturally be happy when we get to what we're supposed to be at. We'll be fine with the fact that we can't understand God in full, because obviously we are physical. I don't feel anything coming from here. We are physical and we therefore can't grasp ourselves, our minds can't grasp the infinite, but we can get quite a deep understanding in the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs this world, even deep things that don't seem to make sense, which of course is what the Ramchal is doing in Das Tfunas, about where the role that evil plays in the world, etc. And so there are very deep things that we can get to, and people aren't satisfied just saying, "Oh, just do the Torah mitzvahs and forget about it." Like kind of what Rabbi Yaakov Moshe spoke about in a previous piece that we just did last week or 2 weeks ago, is that if people don't understand how they are contributing and how what they're doing is actually meaningful in the world, they don't have that drive, right? And that's why they need to understand this concept of Avodah Tzarech Gavoya, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kiviyachol makes us players, participants in the world, not just bystanders that that have to serve Him and have to do things. No, every single action that we do is part of Brias Ha'olam. Actually, it's part of Brias Ha'olam. Right, that's I've mentioned in the past. Yaakov Moshe quotes the Zohar, "Ashabar Elokim Lasos." God created the world, Lasos, that we should make it. We should finish it off. Asiya is the final step of something. Is the giving it the final touch. He created the world, Lasos, that we should finish it off. He left that to us. So I think that's what Rabbi Yaakov Moshe is saying over here, is that the Asos Tekfira really is also a way, it's a dikira ruchnis, which is trying and succeeds. Yeah, what happens when you have these things of kfira? So there are some people that have to take up the slack and answer those questions, right? Then ultimately it forces the community, at some point, to come up with answers and to come up with deeper answers and explanation, which is what's behind the whole surge of the Olam HaMachshava in the last 50 years, which is just getting more powerful, right? Which really was ushered in by Rav Kook. I mean, right? In more recent years, Rav Hutner, right? But he got that whole thing from Rav Kook and Rabbi Yaakov Moshe Chalab. They were really the pioneers calling for learning what's called machshava today, or the Dati Leumi world they call it emunah, but. So you had Chasidus. That's a little bit of a different time, a little bit of a different idea. And here they were calling for, everyone has to get to a deeper Judaism, and that's all b'schus the kfira that went on, that demanded answers and demanded more, and that's continuing. It's continuing. We still need to get deeper. We as far as the community at large, unfortunately, this has still stayed as somewhat of an individual's journey. In other words, you'll have some, you have the people that went to Rav Moshe Shapiro and listen to Rav Moshe, but it hasn't taken over. It's not like it's in the system yet. It's on its way, but it's still not there. So that's the Ureach Begodov, which is the Boidav. And ultimately, I will attach to this something Rabbi Yaakov Moshe said in Parshas Balak, since we just read Parshas Balak today, and I've mentioned it in the past, but it's a beautiful thing, and I like repeating it. Rabbi Yaakov Moshe brings on the lashon, the pasuk hanitzmadim leval pa'ar, right? They killed the people that were nitzmadim, the Jews that were nitzmadim lebal pa'ar, which means attached to Baal Pa'ar, which was a horrible, really crazy avodah zarah. So the Gemara says, the truth is the Gemara brings 2 days. This is pshat in the second day, which is that nitzmadim lebal pa'ar means kitzamid al yadei isha, like a bracelet on the hand of a woman. V'atem advekim Hashem leikeichem, dvukim mamish. But you are dvekim in Hashem your God, dvukim mamish attached. Meaning dvekim, this opinion in the Gemara holds that dvekus is a much deeper connection, a much more real connection, inherent connection than nitzmadim. Because nitzmadim is like a bracelet which is just on. It's not connected to the hand, it's on the hand, it's braced onto the hand. But dvukim is attached. There's a real attachment. It's like, it's like something sewed or stuck together with. Now, says Rabbi Yaakov Moshe, Kan gil salanu atayra. Here the Torah has revealed to us, Shekol avonos Yisrael einam ela min hasafa lechutz. All the sins of the Jewish people are only external. Va'afilu bezman shem tzmudim la'avodah zara v'chadayma. Even at a time where they're attached to avodah zara and the likes, ein ze ela kitzmidim shal yad ha'isha. It's only like bracelets on the hand of a woman. Shirak b'derech mikre heim alel, which it just happens to be that they're on her. But you could take them off very easily. But in their insides, in their depths, in their insides, they are always attached to the living God with mamish dvekus, which is fascinating, because what that means is, right, if we take it today, we look at all the irreligious and leftist liberal Jews who are fighting, and they've always been from the pioneers of the liberal movement, which come to uproot family life, normalcy, right? These are they're the biggest mouths, the biggest money, and the biggest representatives of these ideas, right? And that they're mamish, what the Gemara says over here, nitzmadim leval pa'ar. They're mamish attached to all the garbage. But all that, as much as they are the loud ones and they are they're so into it, the truth is that deep down, and they're also dvekim b'Hashem lekeichem. It will be easy. I mean, for us maybe it's not so easy. Yeah, we don't know how to get into them. There's also they're all. It's a craze. It's like and especially if you're born into it and raised on it. It's hard to take a person out of that whole hashkafa and the whole world outlook. That's a very difficult thing to do. But there is some way for that to be done. There is some way for it to be done. I guess it would take maybe a Rav Kook to do it, or somebody that can get in. It will go quick. It will be very easy to undo it. I think at a certain level, we've had a bit of this in Simchas Torah, where you see like people literally flipped in different ways, not just politically. That's also happened. People politically flip because a wake-up call. You didn't hear it till now, okay? But also on the religious level, on the Jewish identity level, of saying, wait a minute. They're hit with that question of like, what does it mean to be a Jew? And it gets smashed into their face, and all of a sudden they become, very attached, very connected. Obviously, till it actually can translate. Obviously, it's a process to actually switch the whole life and turn into, but there are many of them that are already baderech, they're already on their way, and keeping Shabbos in different ways, kasha. It's amazing again, but that's an important thing. Is we tend to forget this, and also there are those who have a shita to ignore this or not to recognize this. Right? There's a shita that says like all those people that have those ideas and they're anti-Torah, whatever it is, they're apikarsim, and they're not part of us. That's really what it is, right? And the Chazon Ish already refers to them as tinik shenishba. Right? There is this concept. It's actually an interesting thing. Like maybe one would, maybe there's room to be ma'ayin over here in general, right? Because the Shulchan Aruch does talk about those who we consider out, right? There is some level of the Gemara already where there is such an idea of an apikoros who's disconnected himself to the point that we have to kill him, meaning we can put him down into a pit, and if he's stuck, we don't pick him up, we don't save his life, we actually maridin bein malin, right? It's not nog, it's not the halacha today. The Chazon Ish writes the reason that it's not the halacha today is because of this idea of tinik shenishba. It's become a big dispute. Is there tinik shenishba? Not tinik shenishba. Thank God, even those who hold that there's no tinik shenishba still don't do this halacha l'maaseh because they're afraid of being stuck in jail, I guess. But or maybe because they really also know deep down that that the Chazon Ish is right, that there's tinik shenishba. I don't know, but the point is that this is a very important way to look upon our fellow Jews with this deeper underlooking. This is the Shoshanas Yisrael, right? Shoshanas Yaakov, is that that reach is there, but it's concealed. And there are things, and sometimes it's only Kadosh Baruch Hu that can be doiker, that knows how to stab us in the right way, where that odor, that beautiful pure smell, starts to become revealed. But for us, it's important just to know that, and like we've said in the past, we've spoken about this in the past many times, is that when you look upon others in a positive way, they feel that, and they feel that positivity, and it affects them. Right? The way to be mala them. The Peliyoyetz says, I mean, it's not 100% the same exact nekuda, but it's something in the same idea, a very similar idea. The Peliyoyetz says people have a tendency, when they get angry at a person, or they see the person acts like in a grub way, in a vulgar way, they'll call him chamor, chazir, a donkey, or a chazir, l'shain is like that. And he says that's a terrible thing to do, because when you call someone like that, it actually brings a ruach ra of a chamor and a chazir on them. That's what he says. You actually bring, which means you are bringing more tumah and more spiritual filth down onto them. The point being is that our words, and also our way of looking at people, right? This idea of ayin hara, ayin tov, the Kabbalistic aspect of it, right? Is that the way we look at people, the way we speak about people, has a real significance, an impact on them. So if it pains us to see other Jews who are not behaving the way they should, and not acting, not leading lives the way they should, the best way that we can help bring them along is by looking at their pnimius, by remembering who they really are, that they themselves don't know who they are, right? But by having that ayin toiva on them, and on that understanding, right, and speaking like that was the Barditcheva, right, was always Melamed Zchus. This has an impact on getting them to live, and getting them b'chayzer b'tshuva, and getting them to live on a higher level that will help bring them up. The same way, like I always say, like even on the psychological level and in the class, right? If the teacher or the parent looks at the kid in a positive way, and sometimes it's extremely difficult, right? But if the Rebbe or the parent that's able to do that impacts it, that kid then follows suit, right? So on whether it's on a psychological level, whether it's on a spiritual level, this is the way to go. This is our avodah, and that's why Rabbi Akamosh is so into this, and it comes up many times, and Rav Kook was so into it, because that's the way to get Klal Yisrael, to come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And again, like I said in my other shiurim, like when we were talking about the kanoim and things like that, we have to apply to them too. People only take it to one way. All limud zchus is only to irreligious people. No, you have to take it to charedim as well. You have to take it to kitzonim as well. You have to take it to everyone. It's all the klalim are shaykh to all Klal Yisrael, to all. So as Hashem, we should be zeicha to do this, and then we'll get to the next piece in Rabbi Akamosh, which is Talmidei Chachamim Ma'avrim Shalom Ba'olam. As Hashem, next time. Okay. Shabbat Tov.